Hi, this is James, and I'm here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting June 18th, 2018. This week I'm going to be working with a deck that I had intended on using last week. If you watched last week's video, you may remember that I had shared that I had wanted to work with a particular Lenormand deck. And on the morning that I was going to shoot the video, I had a dream in which someone had asked me if I would do a reading using the Gypsy Witch playing card. So that's a deck I used last week. So this week I'm going to be working with the Classic Lenormand. It is a deck by Alexandre Musruck, who is a divination expert, and he has a channel right here on YouTube, so I will put a link to his channel in the description box below. The edition of the deck that I have was his first edition, which was self-published, and it is now available as a mass market version through Schiffer Publishing. So that is the deck, and I have it on hand. And I'm going to take a few moments and shuffle the cards. And as I shuffle the cards, I'm focusing on my usual intention and question for these weekly general readings, and that is, what do we need to know for the week ahead? I'm feeling that's going to be great. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And now I'm going to fan the cards out. And now I'm picking 5 cards because when I work with Lenormand, I like doing a line of 5. So I'm looking through the fan and I'm looking for 5 cards that are getting my attention. Card 4, and now we are looking for our last and final card. And this one, card 5. Okay. So now that I have the card selected, I'm taking the remainder of the deck up. And I'm putting that to one side. And now I have the 5 cards face down in front of me. And just as I did last week, I'm going to start with the card on the far left and work my way from left to right. So let's see what the first card is. It's opening up the potential story unfolding in the cards this week. And so here we have, it's the first card, we have birds. So for me, birds is a card that represents verbal communication. So this could be having a conversation, having a discussion. This is also the idea of maybe receiving a phone call or getting a voice message, any kind of message that you have to hear. So this could be in the form of, interviews online, podcasts, music even. I tend to think of vocalists with the birds card. Anything that you have to listen to. But my first go-to meaning with the birds cards is that it can represent some kind of communication, some kind of discussion, some kind of dialogue, right? Now, because in this particular deck there are 2 birds on the card, for me, this can go with my other secondary meaning of this card, and this could represent a couple or a partnership going with the idea that there are 2 birds on the card. So this could be a relationship issue or a couple issue, and there is a discussion that needs to be had between the parties involved, that kind of thing. The other thing here with the birds card, if we go back to the idea of verbal communication, sometimes this card can deal with like idle chatter, gossip, rumor, speculation. So someone may be dealing with those kinds of things or those kinds of issues. If we're going with the idea of like having to deal with something online, sometimes this card can represent Twitter specifically, because I tend to look at this as a tweet. So there may be some bigger, larger conversation about some kind of tweet. There may be something that happens on social media that kind of goes viral or creates a discussion in a larger sense. So I'm seeing that as a possibility as well. From an emotional standpoint, birds can represent this idea about feeling nervous, feeling anxious, feeling a bit flighty about a situation. So there may be that. So it could be there is a conversation that needs to be had, and there may be a sense of being nervous or anxious about the conversation. So that is my take on birds. So overall, again, birds for me can represent some kind of communication, verbal, dialogue, things of that nature. It could be in the form of face-to-face, person-to-person, and there may be that kind of dynamic going on between two people or having to do with a relationship or a couple. It could also be this idea about maybe receiving a phone call, because again, this would be a phone call for me and possibly a voicemail if it's not where you actually, the parties connect, right? So it could be also a voicemail that you have to listen to, right? And it could just be approaching a situation in which you feel a great sense of nervousness or anxiety or flightiness about. So that's my take on the birds. So now moving to the next card. The next card will help inform us of the first card. And here we have, okay. So here we have the Tower card. So I had mentioned this idea about a tweet with the birds card, right? So here with this card for me, because I tend to look at the Tower card as representing government, and this could be local government, state government, federal government. So this could be a tweet from somebody in our government, the White House maybe even, because I was thinking when I said tweet, I was thinking about our president who loves to tweet. So there may be some sort of tweet that goes out this week that causes a need for a greater conversation, maybe on a national level, who knows. But that is one way to look at this. Another thing here could be if it's not about the government or politics. I tend not to be too political on this channel, so if it's not about that, then this could be a conversation, going back to the birds card, a conversation with a couple, possibly, and maybe having to do with this idea about maybe going through some kind of separation. I tend to look at the Tower card as a separation, so there may be a couple who is actually talking about a split, a separation, or a divorce, and making it legal because the Tower card is about making something official. So there could be that. And that would make sense with the idea if one party is talking to another party about that, having a sense of being either nervous or anxious about the conversation. So I'm seeing that as a possibility with the Tower. The Tower in and of itself could just be coming up when someone may be feeling a need for a sense of withdrawal, a sense of being alone, a sense of me time, quiet time, those kinds of things, because the Tower for me can represent isolation and this idea about living in an ivory tower, right? So there is that to consider. So there may be that as well. The only other thing, and I'm going to go back to what I was talking about having to do with maybe something of an official capacity, because this card can represent a company, corporation, or firm. So there may be some sort of conversation or dialogue needed to have about a policy, tend to look at Tower as policy, about a policy, some sort of rule or regulation with either a company, corporation, firm, or again, going back to government, maybe something on a larger scale with the government or a political conversation, something along those lines, but it may revolve around some sort of policy, rule, or regulation. So that's how I'm looking at the Tower card. Now moving on to the middle card, I always read the middle card as the central issue, something we're being asked to focus on, or in this particular case, because we're just now coming to this card, maybe the heart of the matter. So taking a look at the card, okay. Taking a look at the card, we have mice. So mice, the first thing that I go to with mice is that this can be about loss or theft. So there may be a conversation that becomes official regarding a sense of loss or theft. That's the first thing that I go to with mice. Mice is also about a situation in which there is some gradual decline, something is dwindling, something is decaying, eroding, and it happens a little bit at a time. So little by little, this represents a gradual decline, gradual loss, gradual erosion. That's how I'm looking at that. So I'm going to go back to my first thought, is that there may be some sort of conversation that becomes official, or a conversation about something either having to do with a company, corporation, firm, or something having to do with a much larger political scale, and it will revolve around or center on some kind of loss or some kind of theft. And as a result with that, then this will produce a sense of stress and worry for the parties involved. So that's how I'm looking at the mice card. Now moving to the card on the other side of mice. Here we have, this is quite a week, okay. So now here we have the stork card. So if we go with the idea that the cards are revealing a story, let's say that there is a conversation to be had, something having to do with a company, corporation, firm, something having to do with maybe something on a larger political scale. It has to do with a sense of loss or theft. Then this card as a follow-up would say, and as a result of that, there is going to be a need for some kind of change or improvement, because the Stork card is about change for the better and making some kind of improvement. It could also be too, like somebody may be contemplating this idea about moving on, because this card, the Stork card for me, is a card of migration. So as a result of this, if we continue with the story, as a result of that, somebody may feel a sense of moving on, because this card can represent moving or relocating. So there is that to consider. But my first go-to with this is, as a result of whatever the cards were talking about before, there's some sort of change to be made or some kind of improvement. Oh, and as I put the card down, this is the only card so far in the reading this week that is a face card. And when I talk about a face card, meaning that the playing card insert is a court card. And in this particular case, this is the Queen of Hearts. So for me, in playing card cartomancy, the Queen of Hearts represents a woman, of course. So this could be a woman who centers into the situation. She is also possibly a married woman. I tend to read the Queen of Hearts as a married woman. She's also possibly a mother. So this could be a woman who's married and has children, so she would be a wife and a mother, who may be playing a role in this. It could be she is the person who's deciding that, for whatever reason may be, that she wants to move on. So I'm throwing that in as a possibility. And as I read my playing cards, the mice, because I always look to the card that she may be facing, right? Going with direction in mind. She's facing the mice card, and the playing card insert on this card is the 7 of clubs. So for me, when the 7 of clubs comes up, this card for me can represent small difficulties, or it could represent getting into an argument, which is very interesting, since the first card, the birds card, was all about communication, right? So this card could be about getting into an argument, but it's also about facing a situation which will require a great deal of work or effort, because the 7 of clubs is about hard work being involved. So that's how I would read that. And so now let's take a look at the last card, rounding the reading up for the week. And we have, if I had just waited, the last card here is the Lady card. So at the end of the line, we have what's known as a significator card. So the Lady card usually represents a woman. So we have a situation here where if I didn't acknowledge it with the Queen of Hearts, I would have to acknowledge it now with this card. So here we have a couple of things. Either a woman is playing, again, a significant role or part in the situation as it unfolds, and there may be, as the last card in the line, there may be something about how the situation is resolved that will be in her hands. So that is one way of looking at it. Now I will go with the playing card insert because I've already done that with the previous cards. In this particular case, the Ace of Spades is the card that's the insert here. So for me, this could represent a woman who is needing to make a decision as a result of a problem that's on her mind, because the Ace of Spades for me represents the mind, and it represents a decision that needs to be made. And so as the last card, it would say that the decision hasn't been made yet. It has yet to be made. So there is that. And it could also be too, aces represent something new or something beginning, and the suit of spades for me represents a problem. So I read this as a potential problem. So if I put that all together, this would again be about a woman who has on her mind a potential problem, and as a result of that potential problem, she has to make a decision. Now, very interestingly enough, I read with direction in mind, so if I didn't catch it with the Queen of Hearts, I would catch it now, because she's facing, her body's not facing in that direction, but she's looking at the stork. So this is about her looking forward to, or looking toward, creating some kind of change, some kind of improvement, right, for her future. It could also be too, like she is expecting some kind of change, because the stork card can also be a pregnancy card. So if this is not about literal pregnancy, and basing with the other cards, I'm not guessing that, I would look at this as having a sense of expectancy, playing on the idea like when we're we're pregnant, we say that we're expecting, right? So there is that. So she is expecting some kind of change or some kind of improvement in the future regarding whatever the problem is that she may be thinking about or that's on her mind. So that is how I will read this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.